So in this video, what I wanted to do was go through a few options that are available on the Quad Cortex for creating a doubling effect. And this came up as a question in another video, and it revolved around the idea that both Line6 and Fractal have dedicated effects for doing this kind of doubling. I think actually the Line6 calls it a doubler. I think Fractal calls it an enhancer or something like that. So there's no true effect on the Quad Cortex for doing just that, but I wanted to go through a couple options that are available for kind of taking a core tone and making it sound a little bigger and wider, doubling it, making it sound like there's multiple instruments. And I'm not talking about using a chorus effect or anything like that. I'm talking about what can we do to make the sound of the guitar kind of widen a little bit. And when we think about this, let's think about in the real world when multiple guitars are playing, the thing that makes a sound bigger, or any chorus really, if people are singing or whatnot, is two things. It's variations in pitch and variations in time. And that's what makes two parts sound bigger than one. Even if the same player is redoing it with the same tone, their fingerings are going to be slightly different. Their timing is going to be slightly different. It's never going to be perfectly aligned. So the question is, how can we recreate that effect on the Quad Cortex? So let's start with something that's available on the dual IR block. And this is not available on the cab blocks. It's only available for the IRs. So if you're running dual IRs, one thing you can do is each IR has a delay control. And this allows you to stagger the IR. And it's not something that you want to do kind of in a large scale. Again, this is a very subtle effect to do. But for example, if I play just with the delay at 0, if I pump it all the way up, it goes up to 25 milliseconds. You can hear that there's a little bit of, it almost sounds like a reverb or a slapback kind of effect. And I would never go this high, but it's something you can do. The funny thing about this, if you go relatively low, like a 1, you can get kind of a strange, almost out of phase sound. So that I don't like at all. But one thing I do like is if you keep it really low, you can get a little bit of a doubling effect there because this one IR is getting delayed just a little bit. A lot of times I'll leave it even at 0.05. So again, it's a very subtle effect, and you can almost barely hear it, but it's enough of an effect, especially if you use it like this, and then you start to run it through delays and reverbs. It just kind of widens as it goes. So another thing to keep in mind is you also have level control. So you can balance the different levels of the different IRs. So you might put the one that's kind of dry up, and then bring this one down. Like I said, this is a real subtle effect, but it's something that you can use to create a little bit of width in your sound by adjusting the timing of these IRs. So that's one way to do it. And I tend to turn that on every time I'm using dual IRs. Like I said, I'll keep it pretty low, but just adding a little bit of subtle kind of width to the tone I think is nice. So the other way you can do this is through adjusting pitch. So obviously for that, we're going to the pitch shifter and we're using the fine pitch adjustment. So let's go ahead and turn this on. I'm going to turn this down a little bit actually. And even with just a little bit of pitch adjustment, and I've got the mix pretty low here. If you put the mix up too high, you start to get kind of a chorusing. I don't really want that, so I keep it pretty low. Maybe we could go down to 30. And this is only -1, so this is a very slight pitch shift. You can go, let's see, -9 like it was before. And there you're getting more of a chorusy effect. So I like to keep this kind of low. So one thing you can do is you can run this in parallel. So we go to this other one, and we'll put this one at +1. We'll keep the mix about the same. Let's hear it without. So again, it's a very subtle effect. You don't want too much of this, but we had a little bit of gain to that. You can hear there's a little bit of a warble, sounds like a chorusing effect. That's because of the pitch shift. So again, with the IRs, you're adjusting time. With the pitch shifter, you're adjusting pitch here. And I found my favorite way to do it is actually to use a delay. And with a delay, you can kind of do both. If we turn this on, you can see I'm using a dual delay. The mix is a little higher for the delay. I've got the delay times pretty low, 12 milliseconds and 24 milliseconds. And as you can see, there's no feedback, so we're getting just one delay. And then we can use the mod rate and the mod depth to add a little bit of pitch modulation to it. So right now the modulation depth is only at 50%, but if we hear our dry, you can hear it's like a real subtle chorus effect. You can increase the modulation if you want. And this was the solution I used for the Guthrie Govan settings. So if we drop it down, you can hear it almost sounds like a chorus, but it's not as intense as the chorus, but it's still giving you that doubling effect. Just sounds a little bit bigger, and you're getting a little bit of modulation in there, but not a lot, and it's real subtle, but I think it does make that tone sound a lot thicker. So those are the options that I found for creating this kind of doubling effect on the Quad Cortex. I do wish the Neural DSP would add a doubling effect specifically to do this, but I think there are a few options here. Like I said, the IRs, when I'm using the dual IR, I tend to leave one of them at 0.05 just to add a little bit of that width to the sound. I like that all the time. I just leave it on. The pitch shifters, I don't use as much. To me, it's a very specific sound. I did use these when I was doing the 90s Van Halen preset that I did recently. I'll link to the video here. if you want to check that out. But to me, these are a very specific sound, and I don't use them quite as often. The delay, I think, works really well for doing this. I think it kind of gives you that doubling effect, and you can adjust the mod depth to kind of your taste as to how much you want it to be present in the mix. But overall, I think it's a good way to replicate that kind of doubling effect. The nice thing about it is, too, then you can run this delay into kind of your real delay and reverb, and then those effects will kind of pick up the doubling, and you'll get a wider sound as you go. So I hope you found this helpful, and as always, I'll put this preset up on my Cortex Cloud account so you can grab it and play with the sounds that I've got here. And thanks for watching.